He helped change the way we cared for people with AIDS. Up next.
I feel empowered. I feel like the Dimitri Post diagnosis loves every inch of himself.
Ask your healthcare provider if Biktarvy is right for you, and visit Biktarvy.com to view the important facts, including important warnings.
Welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life, where we're all about turning positive into a plus. Today, my guest, Cliff Morrison, was right there at the beginning, 40 years ago. In fact, if you take the saying, turning positive into a plus, that's exactly what this man did when it came to caring for those living with HIV in the early days of this crisis. Cliff, you're a friend and you're also a filmmaker now. It's great to see you, sir. How you doing?
Good. Thank you. It's good to see you again as well.
There's lots to talk about. I want to get to the film 5B in a minute. I also want to talk about your health because you've been battling COVID, and you, when I say battling, it really took to you. But just for a second, I want to go back to where it all began. And you really pioneered the way that we cared for people living, or should I say really dying with AIDS back then. And I remember a line from the film 5B in which you said, you know, we were caring for rather than trying to save. Just take me back to those early days and where this idea came from for you to turn it about caring rather than trying to find cure as such for what you did as a nurse.
Well, there were so many issues going on at the time, and the politics and the social response to what was going on, the homophobia, and everyone kept saying you're dealing with a terminal or fatal illness, and my reply to that always was, yes, but that doesn't mean that we can't care for people. And so I kind of stuck to that. That was my whole thrust at that particular point in time, was to remind everybody that nursing was about caring. And since there wasn't a cure, and at that point there wasn't even a lot of treatment, it was basically a nursing disease, a nursing illness. And what the patients needed was they needed to know that there was someone there who cared and who would take care of them.
How did you overcome the egos that many in the medical profession, doctors, hospital administrators, politicians, how did you get over those egos to essentially get what you needed to get to make sure that Ward 5B and those patients on that ward got the care that you just described?
I learned a lot of lessons. And one of the first things I learned was to be careful about what I asked for or the way that I asked for it. And I learned almost from the beginning that I never asked for something that I knew the answer was going to be no. And I also found that it was better to go ahead and do something and then say, oh, I'm so sorry. My bad, I did it.
But it was right.
and it worked.
Yeah, well, that's a great sort of, I like that lesson in determination. As you said, we didn't know what this thing was. You didn't know how you caught it. Was there not fear within yourself, I mean, to be on these wards and not know that we didn't know how this was being transmitted? And what did you do to overcome that fear?
During that period, I was never really fearful for myself. I was fearful for other people. I know looking back on it that I was anxious. I certainly suffered from anxiety. I had a lot of trouble sleeping, but I wasn't as concerned for myself because at that particular point in my life, I didn't feel like that I was at risk, for contracting HIV. But I knew that I was working with a lot of people, many of my friends, many people in my community, and I wanted to be in a position where I could, provide the highest level of care possible to them. And if I got sick myself, I wanted to know that there would be a place for me.
What was the response to those people, those administrators, those doctors, when you actually said people need human contact? You said you went about it and did it, but how did they react?
I didn't say that to them first. I said that to the media first. And, I learned to work with and use the media to my advantage. I'm reluctant to use the term manipulate because you guys have been so good to me and I don't want you to feel like I've taken advantage of. But I used the media. I was friends with a lot of reporters and I kept my little Rolodex handy and I called people all the time. And oftentimes, the university hospital and other officials found out what was going on because they saw me being interviewed on the news.
Oh, that would have sat well.
Yeah, and then once it was stated on the news, you couldn't walk it back. So they were stuck with it. And I think, as I look back on it, I think that they were so relieved because, a lot of people have asked me, how did I wind up in this role anyway? And it was because no one else was there to do it at that time. Now later, a dozen people wanted to. But at that time, there was no one. And all of these officials and politicians and administrators were, their backs were up against the wall. They had to be able to say publicly, we're doing everything that we can do. So they let me take the lead on it. And they were very, very clear and open about the fact that this is your head. If this doesn't work, you're the one who's going down. We've done our job and you led us astray.
I think in this day and age, we refer to that as you would be considered media savvy, Cliff. Which is a compliment. You also did something back to the point about care. You started allowing the patients to define who, in fact, was family. This is still something that baffles me in this country. That if you're not immediate family, you can't go near the patient. And hopefully, we're getting there in this world of LGBTQ plus rights. But back then, of course, you've got a patient who is dying. And the rules say that their partner of 30 years isn't allowed to be there. Tell me about the backlash that caused, if it caused any at all, and how you got through that.
That came along well into the establishment of the unit. We were up and running, and literally reporters and cameras were there every day. And it was one of those things that I knew that I wanted to do, but I had to do it gradually. So with the support of the staff and with the volunteers and the counselors and everybody else, we just kind of kept pushing this whole thing little by little. And again, it was one of those things that came out on a television interview that we have decided that we now have our visitors policy is that our patients define who their family is and who they want to have with them. And again, it's one of those things that once it was out there, no one wanted to walk it back because it sounded too unpopular.
Yeah.
So
and you created a model that was then replicated the world over. When you sit here in this day and age and you look back and, look at what you guys accomplished on that ward and then thus wards around the world, how does that make you feel? Mm-hmm. What do you think back on?
I feel really good about it. I think that we made a major contribution. We definitely changed attitudes. We changed the way people were treated in hospitals in a lot of different ways. It was the first time that we included patients in the planning for their own care. We wrote up documents. There were meetings every day with the patients, with their doctors, with their primary care nurses, with their counselors and family or friends or whoever was there with them. So we really looked at inclusiveness as something that was just really vital to what we were doing. And so I felt very good about that. And I have seen now, over the last few decades, that's kind of become the standard of care now.
Yeah, and all of this, you can experience all of this or as Cliff has, relive it in the fantastic documentary called 5B, and we'll put all that information up on the website. But I want to turn the corner for a second here because you have gone from being the carer, taking care of these people as their lives slip away, to being the patient who, and I don't think you mind me saying this, You were really, really, really sick, Cliff. I mean, you and I communicated privately. With COVID, thank God you're doing better. But when you sit now healthier, and I know it's still an ongoing struggle, I know there's still lingering effects of COVID for you. What goes through your mind? Because I remember saying to you, this is not the way Cliff Morrison goes out.
Yeah, I was sick for so long and was in my bedroom by myself for 3 months, and basically felt like I was dying. And being a very spiritual person and active in the church, I gave myself last rites because I thought I was dying.
I remember some of your posts. But what? So then what pulled you through? And did you have moments as you lay there alone in your bed for 3 months, thinking about patients that you had cared for back in the 80s with AIDS and the similarities?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was always very present for me. But what was really wonderful about it is that a number of those people that you see in the film 5B were there with me virtually. Alison Moed and her husband, Michael, checked on me every single day. I did virtual calls with them, and I did with Steve and Guy, and I did with my doctors, and with other people, that were associated with 5B. So they were very much always with me, and it gave me a lot of comfort, and I felt really, really supported.
So what's next? You're on the mend. You've got 5B, which has done the circuit around the world and is really an excellent documentary. What's next for Cliff Morrison? Because I'm so glad you're not done with COVID.
Yes. Well, following 5B, I went on and I did several years of additional HIV and AIDS work, and worked all over the U.S. and in different parts of the world. And then about 24 years ago, I decided that it was time for me to kind of step back, start taking care of myself. I never thought that I would live long enough to retire, but all of a sudden I realized, I need to start taking care of business, because I'm going to find myself a little old man all by myself, and there's going to be no one around and no one will care. So I decided to go in a different direction, and I kind of reinvented myself and started doing the work that I'm doing now, and it's been great. I stayed involved in AIDS. I'm still involved in the community, but I maintained that level of involvement for probably the first 10 years or so that I was in this work.
Well, Cliff Morrison, thank you so much for your time, for all your work, and for being as media savvy as you were back in those early days to really change the way that people were cared for. You've changed literally the lives of people all over the world. Cliff, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carl. It's always great to see you.
That's all the time we've got for this episode of Plus Talk. For more information on anything we discussed today, including the fantastic documentary 5B, be sure to check out our website, pluslifemedia.com, and be sure to follow us across all social media platforms. We are at Plus Life Media. Until next time, remember, you can turn positive into a plus. We'll see you soon.